Hey, deserving listeners, it's the reunion and it's live on Netflix. Let's watch.
I needed to know he did it for him, and the only way I could get that answer was for him to answer first. And I'm happy I did.
Paul, how does that make you feel, knowing that she was ready to say yes?
I don't know. It's difficult, I think. It's always more clear in retrospect.
What is he saying? I don't know. It's more clear. My interpretation or my best guess is he's saying, I didn't at the time think that she was going to say yes and that she was avoiding the question because she didn't want to come across as the bad guy or something like that. I think that's been put out there. I think I might have proposed that as a possibility, particularly in the moment, but then seeing her seemingly have a legit sadness afterwards. I also wondered at the time when at the wedding that she might have not really wanted to get married and had just been sad that it was over and was just unsure as to whether or not, it's not unusual. Paul cried when he broke up with Amber, even though he was pretty sure he didn't want to be with Amber when he was in the pods. So sometimes even though you want something to end, you'll cry about it because it's a loss. So, but it sounds like he's saying, I don't know, I'm hearing this now, and it sounds like maybe she actually did really want to be with me, but at the time it didn't feel that way. It didn't feel that way when we were together before the wedding. But I don't know, I'm reading into it a lot. Maybe they'll elaborate.
Let me ask you this. If she had not kind of punted to you and had gone first and said yes, would that have changed anything?
So my knee-jerk reaction is no, because I don't believe in doing things like making decisions based on other people.
Yeah, I suspect that that's true. He doesn't seem like the sort that would just give in on something of such significance because she said yes. He seems like the sort of person, I mean, the fact that at the party and when the friends were attacking him, he just bounced, even though there was a lot of pressure to stay engaged, right? He just went around the corner and hung out by himself next to the railing and drank a beer, which I thought was a great move, very healthy. And so I don't think he would have said yes. Yeah. Plus, in the interviews after the wedding, he didn't seem like he was on the fence. He was saying, I'm not ready to marry her now. And the kicker that I heard him say was, and even if we had a month or 10 years, I still wouldn't have married. I still don't think we would get married. That says a lot. So at least I think it does. So yeah, I don't think he would have just said yes because she would have said yes.
I really do think that, you should own your truth, and that serves both people in a relationship. So I don't think that I would have, but also I don't know what that feels like, to have your...
Right, so he's referring to that thing he said, which was not the best time to say it, and especially the way he worded it, that before she bolted from the altar, he's saying something like, hey, I think he was trying to say, look, I'm doing everyone a favor by saying no because you deserve someone that actually wants to say yes to you. So I said no as a way of protecting both of us and you included. But the way he worded it was kind of weird, and that wasn't the best time to mention that, of trying to exonerate himself from any kind of guilty feelings that he might have had in the moment. I don't think he should have felt extremely guilty, and she wasn't guilt tripping him in the moment. So it was just kind of an odd time to say that.
Your partner choosing you, saying yes, affirming you. Mm-hmm. I don't know what that feels like. So I don't know. I can't say with 100% certainty that I wouldn't have changed my answer, but my knee-jerk reaction is I would have said the same thing. I don't know.
Yeah. Micah, there was a moment after...
And you would just think that there would have been some compassion towards Micah from him after what she said and how she expressed her emotions. He could have just said a short sentence of just like, hey, Micah, I'm sorry. I get it. I didn't want to hurt you. And then he could have said, but he doesn't indicate any of that. Now, maybe there's something else going on. Maybe after you watch the show and seeing the flirting with Kwame, he's just sort of cut himself off. I could see that. Maybe that happened.
You ran off and they were interviewing Paul, that he said he couldn't see marrying you because he couldn't see you as a mom. When you watched that, how'd that make you feel?
Wow, great question. I'm really curious what Micah would say. I'm guessing Micah has it in her to be diplomatic about this. Like, well, I don't agree with that, and it hurts my feelings, but people are entitled to their opinions. I'm guessing it'll be something like that.
feel?
Terrible. I felt like it was the worst thing that could be said about me.
Yeah, it is a pretty awful. I mean, depending on someone's value, some people might not really care about coming across as a good parent, but a lot of people do. And there was no reason for him to say that. It'd be fine if he thought of that sort of thing or said it to his friends, but to publicly say it in an interview after you're the one that said no at the altar, like, why? And like I said at the time, you can't know that. None of us can know if Micah would be a good or bad parent. There was no data to go off of. You could make some speculations, but not any strong ones.
And I've said that. I've always said that. We even had a date just a few days before our wedding, and he said to me, he was like, well, what if I don't want to have kids down the line? And he brought that to me, and I was so upset because I was, you know how important that is to me.
Yeah, maybe that was another behind-the-scenes incompatibility issue that they were highlighting, or that Paul was motivated by to say no. I don't know. But yeah. Now, maybe Paul has some inside information that would justify him saying that. He didn't say anything about it at the time. Somehow I doubt that he, would have had that. You could see someone in Paul's position saying something like, well, yeah, I mean, she was fine to date for a while, but once I got to know her, I just, there was something about her. And then hearing about other things, and then maybe after he watches the show after the wedding, he's like, yeah, that's not someone that I want to be with. Her friends, the sort of people she hung out with, I think that reveals something about her. And there's just a lot of things about her that really concern me. That would be rational. And then as an addition to that, he's just like, and, can we imagine her being a parent? I mean, when I have kids, I want to be really sure that this person has a lot of strength, a lot of maturity, a lot of ability to have compassion and not have these kinds of malicious streaks in their personality, because I don't want to have to parent a child with a fellow parent that has that in them, because, a lot of your dark parts of your personality emerge when you have kids. So, we could hear him thinking that would be rational as well. But the way he worded it and the fact that he just put that out there, it's very hurtful, very hurtful. And she's, there's a lot of different things she could have done in this moment. She could have got defensive. A lot of people on the show will just counterattack. Like, she could say, well, it's funny that he would say that because he talked about he didn't even want to have kids, so I don't even understand. He seems like he's a worse parent than I would have been. Or I think that would be very common for some of the other reality or even other seasons that we watched. And she's just talking about her pain and saying it hurts and why it hurts, which is a very mature thing to do. Micah and Irina are just so confused. Particularly Micah is so confused. How do you match this up with what you saw in the pods and at the pool and at Chelsea's birthday party? How? I mean, people are multifaceted. And maybe I have to actually check my own bias about bullies, people who are openly and volitionally harmful to other people. Of course, intellectually, I understand that they're multifaceted individuals, and I've been saying that for a while, but maybe I think that but don't really feel it. So, yeah, of course, she bullied multiple times. And according to people on the show, the cast members, we only saw a little bit of it. And hopefully they get to it, because they really went after Irina, and because I'm really curious as to what Micah would say. Because Micah's response, Micah and Irina both after the first 5 episodes, and I reacted to it. Irina gave a video which was much more elaborate and heartfelt, not tremendously, but more. Micah just released a statement. Now, maybe there'll be other interviews. I really hope there would be. I would love to interview her about this. So maybe I should reach out to her, whether it's on the record or not, because I'm just curious. Because it is, anyway, let's see what she says.
What was it that made you say, I can't see her as mom or the mother to my children, our children?
Yeah, I think I phrased that really unfairly towards her. I don't think that it was a reflection of what she was capable of or anything like that. I think the better way to phrase that would have been, I can't see us as parents, because I...
Okay, that's good. Yeah, And I hope he says something like, yeah, I'm just so sorry, Micah, that I said that. That's awful. I don't know why I said it that way, but I should have said it this way. And so this makes much more sense, right? That he's perfectly fine saying this sort of statement.
Just as much as I couldn't see in her. And I want to take 100% accountability and responsibility for my half of that equation. I think it's very possible that the reason why I couldn't see that in her was that I wasn't inspiring that in her. You know, she didn't feel comfortable with showing that side of her.
But I thought she said she did. She just talked.
I think the host is confusing what Paul is saying. I think what Paul is saying is, and I could be wrong, he's, I think, referring to something he hasn't talked about, which is that when they were together, there just wasn't a lot of affection or warmth from Micah, according to him. I think that's what he's saying. He kind of indicated that a little bit after the wedding. And I was wondering that too, because post the pods in Mexico, when we saw them together, there would be a lot of laughs. She would laugh a lot. In fact, there were sometimes when she was laughing in a semi-ridiculing way, like when she was laughing about his clothing options and his fashion choices. I found that to be, on the surface, to be delightful. You know, they're having fun. Her laughter was very infectious and very spontaneous and pleasant. But when I thought about what she was laughing at, and there were a few moments like that where it was in the ridicule sort of camp. Now, maybe he was fine with that and he wouldn't mind. And I don't know how I would feel if I were in Paul's shoes. But that was the vibe I was getting. But who knows, right? But you compare that to Brett and Tiffany, and I'm so glad we have that example to go off of, because when we look at that, we see so much more affection. And even though we don't see it necessarily, but you feel it when they talk to each other, the way they look at each other, and the way that these two were with each other, it just wasn't there. Now, Paul could be just as guilty. We could absolutely imagine that he wasn't super affectionate either, but maybe he needs that. And maybe it's a pathological thing for him. He's avoidant and he needs someone to invade that space for him to have any closeness with people. There are people like that with avoidant, attachment style. So I don't know, I'm completely speculating, but I think that's what he's referring to, is she's not very warm to me, and thus I can't see her being warm for anyone, including children. So I don't think it would be a good idea that we are parents together. I think that's what he's referring to.
It wasn't evident to me that, like, in my vision of the future,
Yeah.
that wasn't there. You know, you can say, whatever you want.
You wanted
but
actions. Like you wanted her.
I just wanted to be able to see it, I guess. Like,
What would make you see that? I'm sorry. Just so I understand.
I think it's a little bit ineffable, right? So it's kind of an exuding, a nurturing presence.
Yeah, great question by the host. Very good. That's a very good kind of therapist question as well, of put that into context for me and give me an example. We heard Marshall say that to Jackie when she was saying boss up and be aggressive. At some point, he's like, so can you give me an example? And then she wouldn't give him one. So who knows if they had a conversation off camera, Marshall and Jackie, but that's very, very important. If someone says, especially something like that, be aggressive, boss up, I mean, that could just mean a billion things. And you could absolutely misinterpret that, right? So for the host, we're hearing Paul describe something that is very abstract and could be a lot of different things. And so she's asking for example, and he says, well, it's a little ineffable, meaning I think it's amorphous. It's hard to define. You just sort of feel it. And I don't know. I would hope that he would give some sort of, I suspect that if he really had time to think about it, he would say, well, I had a girlfriend once who would just, the way she looked at me, the way she was with other people, she was just, you could just feel the love. You could just feel the warmth. You could feel the goodness. You could feel the attention, the attunement to other people's feelings, including mine. And I never felt that from her. So something like that.
So you didn't see enough of a nurturing presence in Micah? Is that what you're saying? Like you didn't see that?
I think so. There was some of that. But like I said, I'm not saying that there's anything about her that is not nurturing. It's that I didn't give her the proper inspiration and motivation to show that side of her.
Okay. Sounds like a diplomatic answer, which I can commend him for. And it also could be true, what he's saying, that you could imagine being in a relationship with him. And so I can use this as a jumping off point, that for some people, including myself to some extent, I'm getting better over time. But for some of us, we, for whatever reason, early childhood reasons, toxic masculine reasons, whatever, we will not have a practice of expressing our emotions, expressing our pain and our vulnerability. We might feel like we're doing it, but we're not actually doing it. And as a result, we, one, might not notice when we have those needs being expressed. And also, we don't alert other people about our needs. And so we're walking around feeling lonely and neglected. And we might consciously have this complaint that other people aren't warm and nurturing. But what might also be happening, and maybe the sole cause of it, is that we are not expressing ourselves. And we don't know how, because we don't have a practice. We have a habit of just, suppressing it or convincing ourselves that we're okay, or telling ourselves that, well, I'm not a really emotional person, or saying, well, I don't want to bother other people with my emotions. I don't want to burden other people. I'm an independent person. I can deal with things on my own. I'll just do mindfulness, that kind of thing. And so we could absolutely see Paul being like that, right? We don't know, but there's not any evidence that he's not like that. But that doesn't mean that that there is evidence that he is like that. So maybe that's what he's saying too. Just like, I have a hard time being vulnerable and expressing myself, and thus I can't really blame her for not attuning to me because I didn't really give her anything to attune to. So that is maybe what he's saying.
Micah, is this explanation making sense and settling with you, or are you as confused as I am?
I'm just as confused.
No, I don't mean it disrespectfully, because I kind of understand what you're saying, but I feel like you're dodging around the issue. Like if there was a specific moment, you're like, yeah, that's just not something I see. I
appreciate the host saying that she's confused, because I'm reading into it, even myself, with what I'm saying. Yeah, and he's not being very specific, but it could be a product of him, one, just trying to be diplomatic, and two, not really knowing how to talk about this. Like he might have a vague sense that he didn't feel nurturing from Micah, but he actually doesn't have the ability, given the issues that I speculated earlier. He doesn't really know how to even describe it. He just knows. And often for avoidant people, which I don't know if he is, they will match well with preoccupied people, because preoccupied people are so obsessed and hypervigilant about the relationship and so worried that they will be very communicative and very alerting of their emotions and very inquisitive because they're scared, especially if someone isn't indicating much. And so the preoccupied person will bridge the gap a lot. And the preoccupied person, when things are going well, they might actually come across as very caring, maybe very needy at times. And so for the avoidant person, they might find that they really enjoy that because it actually will bridge the gap. And if someone is secure or avoidant themselves, the avoidant person just doesn't feel anything, and there's no closeness, there's no nurturing, there's no opportunities for affection.
It really hurt, and I reached out, and he made me feel like I understood what you were saying. I was like, okay, I get what you're saying, but the way you're just going back and forth and backpedaling and saying all these different things, it just makes me feel like worse.
You know what's crazy? You love your mom, and I thought Micah and your mom were like...
Yeah, my wife was saying the exact same thing, and I thought that too, but Stacy and the host is really... I mean, from the outside, sure, but we can't really know. But, and I said this at the time, that we do tend to, not in a pathological, disgusting, creepy way, but we do tend to marry our parents in a sense, to some degree. Not always, but often. Because in a healthy way, if we had a good relationship with our parents, then it's a relationship model that is inside of us that we will like to recreate. And sometimes it can be a problem, and sometimes it can be actually a good thing. If your parent is very loving and very trusting and very vivacious and very happy and expressive and non-assuming, and you like that about your relationship with that person, then it would make sense that you would try to find someone that was like that. So, yeah, I'm guessing that we're not going to get clarification from Paul about this. I guess if I were Micah, I would say, like, well, I don't understand, like, how would you know if I was a good parent? And also, are you saying that I wasn't very affectionate or nurturing with you? Because that I could kind of get, but how are you translating that to my potential as a parent? It just seems like a huge leap. I didn't even really think about how you would be as a parent. I don't really know, but I would have assumed that you'd be a good parent. I don't know. So maybe some clarification around that. All right. Well, I'll adjourn there and tune in next time when I continue watching. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.